You know, at the beginning of the year, I picked the Phillies to win it all, and so far I don't look dumb.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and this is my sixth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network, where I'm doing double duty this year because I'm hosting Locked On MLB every day and also Locked On A's every single day. Because why not? 5 podcasts a week was just not enough. I need to bump it up to 10. There we go. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called these days. And I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use code lowercase LockedOnMLB for first deposit match up to $100. You may have heard a slight giggle at one point. That belongs to friend of the podcast, friends of winners everywhere. It's Connor Thomas from Locked On Phillies. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, Sully? I'm doing great, man. How could I not be with this team?
I know, my God. You know, this is let's take care of the trivia question first. Because you and I are going to dive headfirst into this. We had Chuck Freeman on the other day from Locked On Brewers, and he's terrific. The trivia question was, who was the first Milwaukee Brewer to win a Gold Glove? And the answer to that is George Boomer Scott. George Scott, who is a Red Sox legend for years and years, but actually had his best years with the Milwaukee Brewers. And it's kind of appropriate that he was a Gold Glove because I have vivid memories of George Scott playing first base with the Red Sox, and he had different colored gloves. He'd have a red glove, he'd wear his blue glove, he'd have his black. He would switch them up, and it was kind of sort of awesome. And he was even though he was a big burly and by the end of his career kind of a chubby guy, he was a dynamic defensive first baseman with a lot of pop. But may he rest in peace, the great George Scott. And but the news of this year. You know what? Going into this year, everyone was anointing the LA Dodgers as the inevitable World Series title after they hired Shohei. It was an easy bet, to bet on Shohei Ohtani and everyone else. I picked the Phillies because, well, I thought they were pretty deep. I think they're going to be this good. Now, granted, there's still a little less than 2/3 of the season left to play. But Connor Thomas, tell me your thoughts on the Phillies so far after they just swept the Brewers, who are not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. This team is hitting all the posts and passing all the tests.
Yeah, they really are. The Phillies are now the last unswept team in the National League. The Brewers were with them on that list until this past series. So that just shows you the level of competition of the team they just beat. And the coolest thing about this Phillies team is not just that they're winning. It's that they're winning in spite of a billion different things and in a bunch of different ways. If the pitching is great, it can carry them. Mm-hmm. If the offense is great, it can carry them. If neither of those things are happening, well, you saw a series against the Brewers and the pitching was good, but the defense really stepped up. If the stars aren't hitting, the depth has been incredible with guys like Christian Pache, and you look at Cody Clemens, David Dahl came up for a cup of coffee to start this series, and he was a huge part of this homestand for the Philadelphia Phillies, homered in a big spot in a game that was low scoring. Like, everybody they put on the field is stepping up for the occasion. How could I forget Edmundo Sosa, who stepped in for Trey Turner with his hamstring injury that he's been dealing with for about a month now. Edmundo Sosa has been an over 300 hitter since that and has been playing really good defense. That's what happens when you build a winning culture, and this team just finds ways to win. So things are all good in Phillies land right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously things can – I mean, I'm not trying to put a hex on your house, but obviously things could go up, things could go down. But here's a sign, and this was when I was doing a little bit of my homework. I'm glad you brought up Sosa because I was going to bring him up. You know, when you have a player like Turner who actually got off to a really good start and you're expecting him to be a big contributor, and you lose him on the injured list. Like, one of the things, if you're not following the team every day like you are, you go like, wonder who they got. Should they trade to try to fill that hole? But the first thing you should always do is look within.
Right.
And then comes Edmundo Sosa, and my God, they haven't missed a step. And when you could, and Sosa is, he's not a spring chicken. He's not like a rookie who's just come up. I actually did a double take. I said, oh, funny, the Cardinals used to have a player by that. Oh, it's the same dude.
Mm-hmm.
Same dude. And last year he was kind of if I'm not mistaken, he was a bit of a utility guy for the Phillies. But, as of right now, he leads the league in triples with 4.
Yeah.
When you have a team where you lose a Turner and you don't miss a beat, that's a sign that something special is happening.
No, absolutely. And Edmundo Sosa deserves a lot of credit for backing up Trey Turner. The crazy thing is it's not just him. He's kind of one of the expected guys because he's had moments with the Phillies in the past. He just hasn't had opportunity because of the strength of his roster. But Cody Clemens started the season in AAA. He had a cup of coffee up here last year because of the Bryce Harper injury. He has been really big in the chances he's gotten. I brought up David Dahl already. Christian Pache hasn't gotten too much time since the Phillies signed him ahead of last season, and he's gotten moments. It's funny. The guy that they signed to be the utility guy that you almost trusted the most is the veteran Whit Merrifield, all-star last year. Yeah, he's been terrible, which it's crazy. There are multiple guys you could point to that you still say, hey, their ceiling is significantly higher than where they're playing right now.
Right.
And we got a 44-19 baseball team. So how good can they even be? Could they be better? It's crazy.
Well, and by bringing that up, I mean, right now, Merrifield's stats are like he's a below a replacement player at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not who he is. And the beauty of baseball is unless a player gets really hurt or just really falls off the deep end, if you start off way above your head, chances are you'll come back down to earth.
Right.
If you're a good player like Whit Merrifield and you come stumbling out of the gate, eventually you'll right the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things that when you take a look at the fact we're almost in mid-June, but next week will be in mid-June. And this is a critical part for every team, as I mentioned on the show ad nauseum, between Memorial Day and the end of August is where you look to fill your holes because you got the trade deadline going. And for a team like the Phillies, part of the holes they're going to fill, they're not going to fill with players, they're going to fill with time.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to fill with the laws of average. You're going to fill with Whit Merrifield is not a 267 slugging player.
Right.
That's not who he is. And so while he probably won't have one of his great all-star seasons, he's going to contribute something. And that something may be towards the end of the year. I mean, you and I have followed baseball enough to know there's been a lot of players who have a rotten first half who then take off. That's why you have so many times you have MVPs or Cy Young Award winners who are not on the All-Star team.
Right.
Because that's one big problem I have with the All-Star game, by the way, is that it penalizes people who have great second halves. So that's why I think you should start the season with the All-Star game. That's a completely different rant. But you have a Merrifield, you have, Marsh who's injured, you have a couple, Castellanos has not been holding his weight. So if they start to play a little bit better, and maybe some of the other players come back down to earth, that's how you're going to keep this team, churning at the high level.
Yeah, absolutely right. And at the high level, they could be at an even higher level, which is crazy to talk about. The Phillies' all-time franchise record, I believe, is 102 wins. That's their high watermark.
Was that the 2011 year?
It was. And this team has been steady on pace for like 112 to 113 for the last month, which that's not sustainable, right? You don't go into it saying, hey, we're the next 2001 Mariners and get close to that 116 mark. But it's crazy to look at this team and say there are things they could still do better. So that's the other encouraging.
And let's talk about things that they could do better when we get back. Let's hear from our friends over at Policygenius. Policygenius is the nation's leading online marketplace for life insurance. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at $292 a year. That's one ticket at Yankee Stadium for a $1 million worth of coverage. So, some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Life can be unpredictable, and Policygenius can take away some of the worries of what your family would do if something tragic happens. Policygenius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found their best fit for their needs. They found it on Policygenius. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB or click the link in the description and get free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB. Hey, let me ask you a question. Where is your hub for sports takes, sports news? I think you got to make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed to give you the biggest sports stories of the day. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on the YouTubes and the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is Connor Thomas. That's Connor Thomas right there. He follows Locked On Phillies. He's loving life. As opposed to if you go to Locked On A's, where the A's have, by the way, the A's lost today. You see the episode of Locked On A's that's dropping later tonight. We talk about the fact that in 7 of their last 10 games, the A's have not had one inning where they scored more than one run. You look at the A's for 7 of their last 10 games, and when they score multiple runs in an inning, they tend to win because they've actually been getting very good pitching and very good relief pitching. They can't. I'd bat 7th on that team.
You might bat 5th.
Well, Stomper the Elephant's batting 5th. They are having a reunion this weekend of the 1974 World Series champion Oakland A's, and I guarantee you, they put the team on the field now, they'll score better than this current A's team. It's kind of sad. By the way, the other team that is always going to be in the running for the best record in baseball and everything is the Los Angeles Dodgers. As we're recording this, the Dodgers who lost the first 2 games to the Pirates, and the Pirates and Ethan Smith at Locked On Pirates had images of a sweep dancing in their head. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. The Dodgers are up 11-4. So I think the bats kind of sort of woke up today. And as I'm recording this, Mookie Betts did well. Teoscar Hernandez did well. Why can't the Red Sox get players like Mookie Betts? It's just not fair.
I don't know. I can't figure it out.
I just can't figure out how they do it. That every year goes by, the Red Sox have left from that trade Connor Wong. Now, Connor Wong's been a fine player. You could get a Connor Wong without giving up a generational player. I'm just saying. Speaking of generational players, Bryce Harper's been good, but he hasn't been Bryce Harper the Great. And of course, if he winds up catching fire the second half of the year, it's kind of like what I'm saying about Merrifield. People tend to play to what the back of their baseball card says.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild because you're right. That's my thought process. When I think about Bryce Harper's season so far, I'm like, yeah, he's been good. Yeah. He hasn't been to the level of Bryce Harper. And then you find out a couple days ago, he's the NL Player of the Month for May. I'm like, wait, Shohei, Mookie, all these great players that are in the National League, and Bryce Harper's the guy, and you look at the numbers and you're like, I guess compared to his peers, he has been great. But that's just the level that you expect from a guy like Bryce Harper. And he's doing very important things for his team. He's played Gold Glove caliber defense. I don't believe he'll win the award, but he'll be in consideration. He should be the all-star starter at first base, which is crazy considering he picked up the position halfway through last year after coming back from Tommy John surgery. And at the plate, he's been quiet relative to his own watermark, but he's been unbelievable compared to the average MLB player. So I don't want to say he's the straw that stirs the drink because the Phillies have about 6 or 7 straws in their drink right now. But ultimately, when you talk about the ceiling of this team, it's always going to come from Bryce Harper's ceiling, and it is still so darn high.
Well, I mean, his May, he slashed .313 average, an OPS of 407. a slugging of 583. That's an OPS. That's an OPS of 990.
Pretty
He
good.
wound up hitting 7 home runs. I mean, it wasn't like what Judge did,
Right.
but you're right. I think one of the best things that happened with Harper is, especially after he had the injuries in that in the 2022 season, that he's come back and he has become a fine first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
He has adapted to it, and that's allowed them to keep Schwarber, who again is one of the weirdest players in baseball, because if you're a traditional dude, you're thinking he's like a Dave Kingman type, and then if you actually watch him, you realize, oh my God, this guy adds so much production, even if it's not some of the sexiest numbers. But you put his butt in the DH.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why we have Kyle Schwarber. If you have to have a DH in the National League, and I'm still not thrilled about it, then you got to put a Kyle Schwarber in there, because you don't want to put him out in the field. What are you, nuts?
Not at all.
No. But anyway, I just think if Harper raises game and has another May, that's it's gonna be lights out.
It is 100%. And it's not just him, right? You brought up Nick Castellanos earlier. He's starting to barrel the baseball a little bit more. His exit velocity has been through the roof lately. You saw him hit a 2-run home run yesterday, the only offense in the series ender against the Brewers. You saw him hit the walk-off double in the 10th against the Brewers in Game 2. He had a solid end of their road trip, even though the team didn't play too well. If he comes out of it, he was an all-star last year. He could be an all-star caliber player for a stretch. The consistency will always be a question, but he's another guy that has a higher ceiling. Bryson Stott, there was talk last year that if Luis Ariz decided to retire mid-career, which he will never do, that a batting title might be in Bryson Stott's future. He's that good of a hitter. Now, no one is that good compared to Ariz, but the point is there are guys on this team that still have so much more to give. And we're not just talking about the role players we did earlier. Even some of the starters have more on top of this, and they're already 25 games above 500.
Yeah. Well, by the way, do you know what, as of this recording, Matt Strom and Jeff Hoffman have in common?
They have an ERA below 1.
Right. Do you know what Ranger Suarez and Keckering have in common?
I don't know that. The whip below 1?
No, the ERA below 2.
No,
I mean, when you start piling up, and by the way, I haven't mentioned Aaron Nola or Zach Wheeler yet.
Yep.
I mean, this is one of the things. I mean, another name of someone who, if they start to raise their game a little bit, is Taijuan Walker, because Walker has so far been. I'm not going to call him a bust, but he's not been good.
No, he hasn't been, man. And that's a tough thing. You gave him a lot of money last offseason coming into this team. The thing that we're talking about, because got a chance to talk to Jason Stark about this, and he brought up how it seems the Phillies are going to keep him in rotation simply because you can get away with doing that. He's been a league average 5th starter, and you expect more from the name. But with the other guys in this rotation, for the Phillies rotation, the top 4 pitchers, ERA-wise, are in the top 6 in the National League.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
How is Suarez going to miss a starter? He's not on the injured list, right?
He's going to London, and he is in the projected starter spot right now with what I'm seeing when I look at like the ESPN app and stuff like that. I don't know. It's 50-50. Been hearing he could skip 1, but it probably won't be a long absence if he does.
But the other thing is Turnbull's pitched well for you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have to, by the way, here's why I think Walker should stay in. Okay.
Okay.
Because I would rather have shakiness from your starting pitcher than a reliever. I know that sounds weird, but if let's say you're starting to use Turnbull, and then he starts to shake in, and you bring in Walker, and Walker wets the bed. You're better off putting in Walker, hoping he turns things around. By the way, this is why the win-loss record is so ridiculous, that Taijuan Walker has an ERA that's closer to 6 than to 5, and yet he only has 1 loss. Okay? If you're, what are you talking about? He's only lost 1 game. He's in the Cy Young conversation. This could be a situation. I don't know if you remember when Storm Davis pitched for the A's in 1989. He won his record was like 19-9.
Mm-hmm.
And his ERA was in the mid to high 4s, and he averaged 5 innings a start. Like every other metric had him be a completely pedestrian starting pitcher. But people did the whole Roger Rabbit, God, when they saw, look at his record. He's a superstar. No, he pitched 5 innings, handed the ball to Rick Honeycutt, Dennis Eckersley, and Canseco and McGuire hit home runs at will. So it's like, so he wound up winning 19 games. Taijuan Walker strikes me as a guy who, you have two aces on the team, three really, with Suarez, Wheeler, and Nola, the law firm of Suarez, Wheeler, and Nola. That's not bringing up Sanchez. So you're fine every 5 games throwing him out there, crossing your fingers that he winds up pitching to the back of his baseball card.
Right.
And if he does it, you have an incredibly deep bullpen and a lineup that can cover it up.
100%. You have that luxury. We talked about that with Castellanos. People have been ripping me apart because everyone who follows Locked On Phillies has been commenting, why haven't you been bringing up Castellanos more? And my point is, the track record shows you he's a better player than this. The record shows you have the luxury of letting him figure it out, and you lose the guy if you make a change, or you risk the potential of losing the guy. And it's the same thing with Walker. It's not ideal. I'd rather have Spencer Turnbull, who had a sub-2 ERA, as a starter for the Phillies earlier in the year, but you have the luxury of trying to let a pitcher with a better pedigree work his way out of things. And this is the upside of starting a season hot rather than playing June catch-up like the Phillies have done the last couple of years.
And when we come back, I want to talk about how to deal with the final 2/3 of the season and starting it from a positive instead of coming from behind.
But before we do that, why don't we talk about Prize Picks, all right? Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun, exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on a bunch of different stats. Like take baseball, for instance, strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs, all of that great stuff. If you've got a feeling about a certain player, go ahead and pick more or less on those stats, and you can find yourself some winning. I mean, you could turn $10 into $1,000 like that, quick as a snap, in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. By the time this ad's done, someone like me, and I'm not that smart, come on, I could have put together a Prize Picks lineup, and you're smart enough to watch Locked On MLB with Sully, so you could put it together maybe in 45 seconds. You're ahead of the curve. It's great. There are a lot of great options. It's not just baseball. You can do it hockey, basketball, football when that season rolls around. Any day of the sports calendar, Prize Picks is awesome. So check out the daily action. And guess what? They're also going to cut you a deal. It's almost like they're like, what do we have to do to get you in the door? Do you need $100 given? And that would sound like a crazy request, but not the Prize Picks. No, they're going to help you out. You download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get a first deposit match up to $100. That means you put $100 in your account. There's $200 in there. That other $100, courtesy of Prize Picks. Again, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get a first deposit match up to $100. So check out Prize Picks. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy.
Computer got stuck, but I'm here to tell you that Locked On has started the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now it's available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local extras of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports today, now available on the free Fire TV channel app. Now, look, we've been singing praises and basically acting like, hey, it's the late 70s, early 80s all over again. Rocky Balboa's winning. All the Philadelphia teams are winning. Everything's great. It's a bicentennial all over again. Randolph and Mortimer Duke's investments are cashing in. I can't tell you everything great happening in Philadelphia right now. And by the way, if this doesn't put David Dombrowski in the Hall of Fame, nothing will. I mean, this guy, whatever he touches just turns into... People should just hire him. If you're like, I swear, give me a couple of years, your team will be in the World Series. I'll trade away all your prospects, but you'll be in the World Series. And in the end, that's all that matters. Is there anyone down at the farm you're looking to see? And is there any move to fill a hole that you are keeping an eye on moving forward?
We'll start with the farm because honestly, Dave Dombrowski has been a little out of character in that since he came to Philadelphia. And part of that is because you already had Bryce Harper here. You already had a bit of a core that you had put together. And it was free agent signing, not so much trades, to build the strength of this roster. So there's a good amount of players down in the farm system still. Aiden Miller, one of your top prospects, one of the top prospects in all of baseball, third baseman. He's still down there. You could move him. That three-headed monster of Griff McGarry, Mick Abel, and Andrew Painter. We've been hearing about those guys for years as potential trade bait or potential starters at the next level. They're still all down there. You've got some names, and of course, you've got Crawford, who is a great outfielder that the Phillies want to keep. I would prefer to see them. Here's where I stand on this, right? And maybe I'm misguided, so let me know if I am. But I think this team is I think this team is quite good as is. So I'd prefer to see the Phillies be a little bit more conservative at the trade deadline. I think if you roll this team through with Trey Turner getting healthy and the bullpen staying hot and this lineup figuring some things out, you could be good enough as currently constructed. But there are two things I want to see Dave Dombrowski do at the trade deadline. Every good team in baseball adds a relief pitcher or two. That's just par for the course if you want to compete in October. So I want to see them do that. Now, I don't think it'll be a Mason Miller caliber move because he's going to command a heck of a lot. But add a veteran reliever that you trust to add in for some of the guys that are your less leverage relievers. And then also outfield has been a tricky spot for the Phillies. Castellanos hasn't really produced. Pache is a bench player. Johan Rojas hasn't produced offensively to the level of your average major league player, even though the defense is great. And Brandon Marsh has cooled off. We already talked about Whit Merrifield. Outfield has kind of been the non-productive section of this Phillies roster. So if you want to go out there and see who's available, maybe a Jazz Chisholm out of Miami, make a splash move, that could be something. But I see that as more of like a depth move as well. So outfield, relief pitcher, that's probably all the Phillies are going to look to do come trade deadline.
Hey, everyone, I have to jump in here. We had tremendous technical problems at the end of the episode. You probably saw there were some glitches that were going on. Well, it got out of control. And so, hey, I'm sorry, Connor Thomas. We had to end the show. Maybe is that an omen for the Phillies and maybe they may have some trouble later on? I don't know. Follow Connor Thomas at Connor Thomas 975 for the best news about the Phillies, and check out his terrific show. Hey, running down the major leagues, the Royals edged the Guardians 4-3. The Blue Jays held on for a late Orioles rally to win 6-5. I mentioned the Mariners shut out the A's again, and the Dodgers made quick work of the Pirates 11-7. The Braves edged the Nats 5-2. The Yankees just have their way with the Minnesota Twins. Weaver won 8-5, Holmes with a save. The Rockies snuck past St. Louis 3-2. The Reds, look out for the Reds as they're coming strong against the Cubbies. The D-backs beat the Pirates 4-3, and the Red Sox absolutely trounced the horrible White Sox 14-2. And as of this recording, the team that has the last wildcard spot in the National League are the 2 games under 500 San Diego Padres, and 1, 2, 3, 4 teams are within half a game of a wild card spot, and the Pirates are 1 game back. So the D-backs, Reds, Giants, and Cardinals are all a half game out of a playoff spot, and the Pirates are only 1 game back. So it's going to be a fun time. Hey, I'm going to be on the road for the next few days, so we have a couple of evergreen podcasts that I have for your enjoyment. Hopefully you'll like them, and I'm going to be doing 1 or 2 episodes on location, but your pal Sully is going to be traveling for a few days. So enjoy some of the evergreen podcasts I have coming up at the beginning of next week. Thanks a lot, Connor Thomas, and follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully, but Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Praising the Phillies with Connor Thomas. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.